I'm getting my documents together. Okay. Let's call this meeting to order. It is 6:10. Can you please take roll call?
Commissioner Gaudet, Commissioner Mosier here, Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Marshall Lee,
Present.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Present.
Commissioner Wright Abdullah,
Present.
Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Martin,
Here.
Commissioner Nims,
Here.
Commissioner Mohammed Knight, Commissioner Larkovich, Commissioner Eaton, Commissioner McKenna. I have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to enter some exhibits. This is the civil service chapter. This will be exhibit 1. The exhibit 2 will be a recommendation from Michelle Lyons. That's this document. Councilwoman Michelle Lyons. And then exhibit 3 will be draft 8. Yes. John, all right.
We need one document.
All the documents are over there.
That sheet is over here.
Okay, should be over there.
So you're missing one sheet. No. Oh, yeah, you need that.
You elected the only people that are right on it.
We don't bump our hearts.
John, the sheet is not here.
That's what I was
Oh,
Alrighty then.
that's party.
Tonight is our second session with the civil service, and you exhibit 1. Are these changes that you made based on our discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want to walk us through that, or did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may go through the immediate edits or revisions that we made prior to our first engagement with the
Okay.
So through the chair, if I may, first and foremost, we did take the commission's comments in correcting and converting any he, she, his, her, his, or she to gender-neutral pronouns. Thank you for letting us know that. We corrected various typos throughout the document. Beginning on the Exhibit 1, page 3, the page numbers are noted at the bottom of the page. We had conversation regarding city and town clerks. That's, again, your page 3, section 205B1. We had removed in conversation city clerk, town clerk, and that 1 now reads the mayor and all officers elected by the people.
Can you just clarify the blue, is that your, wait, the blue that struck out, is that your deletions in here?
Correct. For some reason, it came out red and blue. I tried to change it back to red, it just didn't.
Okay, so,
I may have hit an enter or some reason, and it just kept going blue.
So this document is red, white, and blue.
Let's hope it's red.
I think there's some green somewhere, I'm not gonna lie, so.
Right.
Yeah, there is some green, I think the green are the numbers.
and purple.
And purple, I mean.
It is,
you
it's
know,
very colorful.
Yeah.
But it's under the same guise as the
Yes.
red?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's red.
There you
Oh,
go.
there you go, yes. So page 3.
So page 3 again, as discussed at our first session, the removal of city and town clerks. We'll then move, we did note that we had conversations about city treasurer, which was under the 205B. That, I believe that is under the listing of the unclassified service. There was comment from the commission to remove the city treasurer. However, we weren't sure of whether or not the other portions of our charter were also going to be amended in accordance with our city charter. The section specific to finance and the city treasurer, it does speak of the city treasurer being appointed by the mayor for a 2-year period as listed under the section 205B. And so we wanted to engage again and determine we can remove it from the listing that's proposed, but didn't know whether or not the Charter Commission is also removing or updating that section and the other reference in the charter itself. It's found under the finance section, under the section of the city treasurer.
I did have a comment about this section. Should I wait until the end or?
I think I have,
Well, the lists and the.
yes, I do have another edit for the list, and maybe I can stop there. If I may?
Okay.
Okay. So page 5, we had, actually, I'll still go back to 4. We had significant conversation about the Director of Labor Relations and the Deputy Director of Labor Relations and the subordinate classifications within that office. The commission alluded to us that we have felt that the Director of Labor Relations should be the position appointed by the mayor and the subordinate classifications at the pleasure of the director. So we took the recommendation from the commission directly and made those edits. When we're going to, again, page 5, number 25, in specific the Board of Education positions, as noted in our first section, we had engaged with the superintendent of schools, as well as the superintendent's Office of Human Resources, in order to compile or navigate and discuss a potential list of classifications that should be in the unclassified service. The following were identified: superintendents of schools, deputy superintendent, chief financial officer, and deputy financial officer, director of grants, chief operating officer, chief human resources officer, and deputy human resources officer, operations manager, superintendent's community liaison, digital content creator, manager of budget and financial reporting, and director of payroll benefits. There was actually more classifications that were on the list that was originally proposed to us for submission to you, but in navigation of that, there were some positions that were deemed and determined to be in the classified service, not in the unclassified service, as they didn't really reach that executive level and appointment or terms. We also removed some classifications that were asked to be added that naturally and normally require state certification. And those already as written in our current charter, and it remains in the proposed, that any positions, as you'll note, requiring state certification will be in the unclassified service, and those would be at the discretion of state statute in the Board of Education. And I think that covers the list in 205, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. One suggestion I have is, is it possible to put like anything that says serves at the pleasure of the mayor together, and then provisions of the charter together? Because it's like either or, And then the ones where it say serves at the pleasure of like the city attorney or something else, I can't remember, or the police chief.
Director.
Could those be, so basically like chunk them,
Okay.
mayor, charter, other people, so just, I don't know.
Okay, so we will, so if I've gotten that correctly, we want to sort it similar or based on their respective appointment or pleasures of.
Yes.
Okay, you got it.
Can I make a recommendation too about serve at the pleasure of? I know the discussion was that it's usually legally used that way, and I think, to me, it doesn't sound right, and I think it should be the discretion of the mayor. It means the same thing. So to me, it's more professional.
Who will make note? Okay. Discretion of.
And I even looked up the explanation of that word.
Yeah.
Same thing. It
Unless
just sounds more
the city
professional.
Yeah, I
attorney has
agree.
issues with that, then I think that's fair.
No, not at all. I like that.
Yep.
And then go along with the same chunking.
Okay, will do.
Does anyone have any questions for what was presented right now? Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Let me just see something.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes, I have a question. It's a practical question, it's not here, but it's behind. It may be a practice, it may be a policy. Does labor relations look for department heads, supervisors, whatever, to sit with employees in their department and on a regular basis, perhaps annually, to do an evaluation?
If I may, through the chair, so there are provisions in the proposal, we may have covered some of it last time, but so our charter right now requires that all employees engage in a probationary period. And I think we
I
had,
understand that, so beyond 6 months, I'm sorry, I didn't add that to it, beyond 6 months.
okay, along with the provisions of probation, there are something called service ratings, as you'll note in this section and throughout. Those service ratings are required for promotion or post-examination. Labor relations itself, outside, so just to kind of break down a little bit, if I may, to give context, the city of Bridgeport has what anybody outside would call their human resources, more of a four-headed kind of thing, where you have civil service, which is governed by Chapter 17. You have labor relations that's handling the collective bargaining agreements pursuant to state statute. You have what the city of Bridgeport calls human resources for the city, and they do Family Medical Leave Act, Americans with Disabilities Leave, employee development, and various kind of employee engagement process. And then you have benefits administration. Human resources, what the city calls here, and benefits administration technically fall under labor relations, and your benefits administration is what it sounds like, medical, dental, vision, prescription, health, etc. So just to make sure that we understand the context of when being presented the question of does labor relations possibly in a form of collective bargaining or their union contract or maybe policy require department heads to engage with their employees on an annual or a regular basis. So there are, I guess what we call policies that would have or instruct labor or a department heads to engage with employees on a basis of need, not really scheduled time. There's annual reviews or biannual reviews.
You and I talked about this 8 or 10 years ago, It sounds to me like the 4 areas have been consistent throughout. The simple answer, and you could lay out exceptions, is no, isn't it? No, because some of the evaluation beyond 6 months becomes a matter of labor contracts. Perhaps that's what I've been told. Anyway, not by you, but by others. Therefore, off the table. I just think, and I've heard it enough, that when a grievance comes up by an employee and they're not being, as they would in the business world, or teachers do because those are taxpayer paid by the state, whatever, requirement, that get evaluations that point to where they may be better served by attention to this matter or that matter, as a supervisor intends, by using benefits that the city has. This is a supervisor, a manager, a department head. And this is my opportunity to ask my question and to get an answer from the city on why this isn't routinely done.
Yeah, through the chair, I would want to kind of push back a little bit. I would want to push back a little bit and
I
say,
hope you would.
yeah, I would want to push back a little bit again and say that I don't think that evaluations of employees are on an annual basis or on a monthly basis or on a bi-weekly basis. The evaluation of employees are on a regular basis, and as the department head is evaluating the performance and the operations of their work, and the department head should be engaging with their employees and identifying the problem areas or the deficiencies and engaging in what is customary as a performance improvement plan if there's one that needs to be. I think what you're talking about is there should be somewhere in a management policy that there is a mandated annual training that department heads do with their employees in addition to what is expected of an employee as built into their job descriptions and their requirements to evaluate, to review, and engage with their operations and their employees. I don't think that Chapter 17 is that platform. I think it's more of a policy request, and then the union, as you pointed out to, or the collective bargaining unit, would have a right to what's called impact bargaining, where management issues a new policy that governs and has the potential of impacting their employees, and said collective bargaining unit has the ability to say, I want to impact bargain what's going to happen when you institute X policy in the review. If after the review, my employee is going to get disciplined, I should have a right as the collective bargaining unit to say what's the level of discipline. Again, I want to be, and the only reason I push back a little bit is I want to be clear that irrespective of a policy saying that you should do something on an annual basis, a department head should be engaging with their employees regularly. And if the department head doesn't do that regularly, that's the deficiency of the department head.
So the person they report to, who's doing oversight of the specific hypothetical department head you mentioned, what do they fall back on?
I think, just to answer your question of, we can go on down this endless chain of who's
To the
checking
mayor.
who.
To the mayor, ultimately.
Even from my course here, where I report to a civil service commission, and embedded in this Chapter 17, it says that the Civil Service Commission can investigate me if I'm not doing something right. If I'm not doing something, if my office is deficient, a constituent can complain to the commission, and the commission can call me to hearing and say, what's going on? And they're evaluating me. Above the commission, I guess, who is the public? So we can keep going up that chain. But ultimately, beyond the mayors, who? The voters. So, I mean, who evaluates, at what point, where does the evaluation stop? But again, the core functions of a supervisor is to supervise and to correct deficiencies. Now, if there is a need to put something in a policy that's permanent, I think that's, not in this, but rather in some policy that maybe the recommendation gets sent to management.
Last question, and it's simple, and it doesn't not need an extended answer. Is there anything that an employee of the city of Bridgeport, in the general, not in the Board of Ed, is there anything, do they have a file that is an empty file unless there was some reason, as you said, to correct somebody? Do they have a file which they can rely on to state?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I will try to give you a
No, if it's not a
yes or no
simple answer,
question.
I can,
Your question in itself is technical. So, I mean, I can say yes or no, but there isn't an empty file. All employees have a personnel file, and they're engaged with as needed to put various documents, including correction and discipline.
so if there were no corrections or whatever, there'd be nothing other than the other standard forms in that file.
I would say that's incorrect.
Thank you.
Is this, yes?
I just wanted to provide comment and context to that. So it depends on the department head. In the city attorney's office, there is a file on every employee that's separate and apart from their file that resides with civil service. And that file does contain performance reviews, right? So it depends on the department head. Everybody doesn't do them, but some departments do.
So there are performance reviews in some departments and not in other departments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple of questions on the other document, that I don't see any changes of the name on the new document, so I'd like to ask them.
Okay.
Okay, so in the first paragraph, last line, if the city council fails to approve the appointment within 60 days of submission, the appointment is deemed approved by operation of law. It's the last sentence.
Yep. So you're at section 203, A.
Does-
Got it,
So
okay.
does the city council submit a reason for non-approval, or is this, they just missed it?
The intent is that if they just missed it. That's very similar language to the state statute. The state statute right now, for example, says they give timelines to the legislative body for collective bargaining ratification. So if labor relations and collective bargaining agreements submit a proposed collective bargaining agreement, and the council doesn't act within a timeline, it does become
So my next question is in the second paragraph, that the mayor fails to appoint, but then he has the right to veto? But he failed to appoint, so why would he have the right to veto?
So the veto is only if he, so if he failed to appoint, and then it shifts the authority to the city council president, and then they would make an appointment, but the mayor within 14 days. Again, the thought process there was just checks and balances. If the commission feels that, and I don't think that the proposal is very strong on this or not, but the thought was checks and balances, and really to get commissioners appointed regularly.
But I don't see it as a check and balance. I see like the mayor cannot appoint, and then, oh, the city council doesn't, and then, oh, well, I'm gonna veto anyway. So I just don't,
Well, if I may,
if somebody can explain that better for me?
I'm glad you caught this because I don't think that this is the best place to, and we're going to make, I think, a general provision that's going to cover all boards and commissions, and I don't know that creating a separate rule just for the Civil Service Commission makes a whole lot of sense. Although I hear you're doing what this body's looking to do for every board and commission, so it's no slight to you, but I just think we should take it out completely. But on the back end, I mean, the mayor has substantive veto authority over every action of the council, and so the fact that you stated it here, you're kind of stating the obvious, like anything the council votes on substantively is subject to mayoral veto. The mayor could theoretically appoint somebody to the commission today, get the council to approve it, and then veto that action.
The council.
There's no reason to do that, but, you know, it doesn't make
Oh,
sense.
so
The council has override.
And then the council has override authority by 2/3. Yeah, so, I mean, that's just the legislative process.
My question is, why can't we just strike it from this and you can move it? Why can't we get rid of it?
That's my suggestion. I don't think it.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, no, through the chair, I mean, like, we can, and when we were going through this, we were explained that there was potentially gonna be a section, we haven't seen that section yet, so we didn't wanna take it out. The only thing that, I would harp on is the need for the employee member language. The Civil Service Commission is a unique commission which contains one member that's elected by the employees of the city, and they're an employee member. Other than that, what the commission does, I think, I agree with Tom, is there's a uniform across the board for the other members, that's fine. Again, we did talk about there would be a universal provision of commissioner appointment. We hadn't seen that, so we didn't take it out.
When it comes to this, to the chair, when it comes to the city employee, you require notice to all city employees that an employee member election is upcoming. What is exactly that notice?
So,
Page 2 of 20.
yeah, so in our current charter, there's a literal posting in a city newspaper that has a certain circulation amount. We have done that, but what we do is send citywide and bulletin in addition to that. I think, again, the appropriate notice of getting out there is, right now, the practice in addition to that Sunday classified that no one's reading. Mhm.
So, speaking of that same section, the employee is not a member yet, are they? Or are they a candidate?
The employee would be a candidate, sorry, what's your question?
So if you go to 5, it says, which allows all city employees to vote for the employee member, but they're voting on it, so isn't it a candidate, not really a member yet?
I mean, I think that it would mean the same if you add candidate in front of that, or we can add that, that's no problem.
But I think, on my question here, I think the idea of notice should be better outlined.
Yeah, we could add and paste those in your checks. Yeah, so again, the notice in of itself, it isn't something that we just posted one city hall ago. We actually go as far as putting it in everyone's pay stubs. Like, it will read in your pay advice, and it says the election, the deadline, and we send out a letter to everyone's home address through the payroll system. We send out a mass email. And for everyone that doesn't get the email, that's why we do the pay advice. And for everyone that doesn't get direct deposit, that's why you get the hard paper advice. So we go far above.
I just wanted to make sure that notice was given.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and since we're on this page still, 6, is there a way to cite the rules and where they are?
So the civil service rules are a document of themselves, not embedded in the charter.
Right, so
And
can you cite where it is or something?
yeah, I mean, like, do we have an encyclopedia of the city, or maybe that we can?
Well, I think it depends on, did you define in the back section what the, so you didn't define the word rules, so I think maybe the way to address the chair's problem or concern is to say the rules of the Civil Service Commission. That is a very specific meaning. So say a little bit more, you know, I agree.
Yes,
It could say a little more.
And I think the chart itself, speaks to that the rules themselves, that the Civil Service Commission, I think it's under the Civil Service Commission's authority, has the authority to create rules to assist in the administration of this chapter. But if we want to, in the definition sections, the rules of the Civil Service Commission, as referenced in the authority of the Civil Service Commission in section, I think it's 207, shall be maintained in the office of the Civil Service Commission and with the office of the city clerk.
Nothing you need to put it in the charter, but it probably would be helpful. Unless I completely missed it, I don't think they're posted on the civil service website. They probably should be.
They were.
They're hard to find if they're there.
It'd just be nice to know.
But I could be wrong.
Madam Chair.
When we first.
Madam Chair, I have a question. I'm reading that, are they saying an employee?
Where are you and what number?
Huh?
Where are
Okay,
you?
you want.
Well, I'm back at the front page 203, B, at the bottom. Is it a civil service employee going to sit on the board?
So,
So,
just to, sorry.
One employee, so you have the commission members, but one of them will be an employee from the city.
So how does that, when the finance come up in terms of the raise and for the money, how does that employee, are they going to abstain from voting?
Sorry, I missed the question.
So he's wondering if, because there's an employee on this commission, do they recuse themselves from certain situations where it involves money?
They don't.
Because they work
They
for the
don't
city.
vote. They don't vote on cost of living increases. That's the city council.
No,
They don't vote on collective bargaining agreements. That's the city council. They do vote on matters involving employees such as discipline and other matters, and that's exactly why they're there. They're there to represent the interests of the employees, but they're only one vote.
Right, and essentially, through the chair, if I may, they're like a president of a union, right? So the president of the union is engaged in active negotiations like representation of oneself and of my membership. So the employee is representing the membership, in this case being the employees overall.
Yeah, I just want to kind of get a clarification on that, and how the paid employee not serving on a board with, have any voting in regards to the finance or, for
Yeah.
So, third paragraph down.
What page?
Page 1 on the,
Oh, we're still in
this, questions that I wrote. Is this, so if everybody has read it, my question is this across all commissions that this, an event of vacancy? So, let's see.
Pertains to the civil
Just the
service.
civil service.
Correct.
Okay. All right, never mind. Okay, so then on page 2, at number F, did we move that to chapter 1, that language?
You
Or
said
does
page-
that need to be in every section?
You said page what?
Page 2, on the one you shared with us the other day. I'm on this one,
Okay.
let me see if there is.
No, it's okay. F, general statute, special act, no provision of the general statutes or special acts inconsistent with any provision of the section shall apply to the city of Bridgeport. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, did we move that to section 2? I mean, chapter 1, I'm asking the general commission.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Did we move F to the provision section? It's on the bottom of page 2.
Oh, yeah, it's in section 1.
Section, yes, so
I'm sorry, chapter 1.
chapter, do we need to keep it here, or?
We don't need to, it's severability. That's what it's called, is the severability clause, and it's in chapter 1.
All right, and then also equal opportunity, section 302, 203.1.
Top of page 3.
Well, yeah, I'm in the whole thing. Yeah. Are we gonna also include the updated language that we talked about for that one, where it says because of race, sex, gender? Are we gonna use updated language for that?
What was the language updated to? And where else was it used?
We were gonna use it, I think, in chapter 1 also, in like and also I was wondering, is this gonna go into the chapter 1 as well?
So chapter 1 didn't have a place for it, so I did create a preamble that includes that type of language.
Okay.
We can create a section for it if you'd like. It just didn't exist currently, so I didn't create a new section.
Yeah.
Through the chair,
But
if I
they
may,
have it here.
I mean, equal employment opportunity is something that we have to follow irrespective of our charter or not. It's a federal statutory mandates, and as previously discussed at our Saturday conversation, all examinations, appointments, promotions, hires, you have to assess the four-fifths adverse impact analysis and the like. This language is carryover language from our existing charter, and it specifies appointments, promotions, reductions, removals.
But if you can take a look at whatever version you have of the updates, and it's on the second page.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's the language that you provided.
And, well, I did have some questions about that too, but we'll.
Okay.
But didn't we, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, didn't we make a change to that in the previous, when we're talking about the term clerk, our city employee, his or her, or that same language? Didn't we make some changes to that a while back?
What do you mean?
Did we change the language? We didn't on sexual origin or whatever. I think we changed it to something.
It is in the chapter 1 now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I was just wondering if this is gonna stay here, could we have the same updated language there?
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes.
wasn't it, this was way back when we were talking about this language, and I think we went to the state of Connecticut.
Correct.
Yeah.
Federal.
Yeah, I grabbed all that.
verbiage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
which
do
is
now.
definitely more than what we have here.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Could I just correct the record, because I confused it? The civil service rules and regulations, Eric, are under the Civil Service Commission, under boards and commissions. They're on the website. Where they're not, and where you might want to add them, is under the Civil Service Department as well. If you do go to boards and commissions and go to Civil Service Commission, you have a link to them. But there's no link through the Civil Service Department.
Yeah, and all the rules through the chair, if I may, as current in the charter and as in the proposal, they're ratified by the commission, then by the city council. So the city clerk has to make a record of it.
I'm just
Yeah, we
talking
can
about
add them.
access on websites for
Yep.
ease of reference, but I was wrong. They are up there. You just gotta know where to look.
Yeah,
So it would be
in
nice to
looking-
have it referenced then,
Sure.
if you have to.
For your preamble, with your general statement of non-discrimination, I would like to talk about erased criminal history, retaliation for protected activity, status of victim of domestic violence, or maybe the other stuff. So I think so there are statutes and regulations governing erased criminal history. And so I think from an employment standpoint, specifically the hiring of police officers and firefighters, I think it makes sense to be consistent and expand. I think that we just need to look into that when we add it here from an employment context.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes?
You're saying that you're proposing to erase record of someone who did something in order to get a job?
I don't think I said that well.
That's not what that's.
I'm just trying to say,
No, through the chair, I don't think I said that at all. I think what I said that I think that we should, in just reading for the first time the preamble and the general statement of non-discrimination, that there are specific hiring provisions in state and federal statute governing erased criminal history, specifically police hiring. And if we're going to just take a section and move it here, or vice versa, I would want to take a look at it. No, so your current preamble through the chair currently says criminal conviction, comma, erased criminal history, comma, and retaliation for protected activity. Through the chair, I'm just repeating what your preamble says.
So that was my base of what's in.
Your preamble.
Right.
That was my base, is that correct?
He's gonna look at it.
Yeah, but please invite that to say.
Beginning of the beginning.
Right.
And maybe all of it doesn't need to go in there.
No, I think that, again, I'm just flagging that I need to take a look at.
But if we have it, if we keep it here in the preamble, does it affect what's here in regards to, say,
Yeah, and-
provisions where they can not put into the position because of previous history?
Yeah, so again, so this is the first time I'm seeing it, so I would like to take it, review it, and engage with federal and state staff.
Under 205, classified and unclassified services, definitions, page, well, I just, and maybe you can help me with this, so I said if there is a salary attached, shouldn't there be more of a vetting process? And this is for the unclassified services.
If there's a salary attached,
Well, they're getting paid, so is there, and maybe I'm not clear about where it is, or, but it seems like for other positions, there's a larger or more in-depth vetting process than,
for the unclassified service, you're saying?
yeah, I don't know what I read, Lisa, do you have
Are we in section 205 or are we in?
205B,
B?
number 2. I should have been more specific, sorry.
So, I mean, in the unclassified service itself, as noted, I think, like you have 2 employees appointed by the mayor to assist the mayor in mayoral duties, and that part of chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, chief administrative officer, assistant communications director, et cetera. These positions serve at the pleasure of the mayor. And then all offices or positions specifically created by charter, and the method of filling which is governed by specific and express provisions of the charter. These unclassified positions, as I spoke about last time, are appointments. And what we're saying is that these wouldn't be governed by the appointment procedures or hiring procedures of civil service. And that's currently, very vague in our charter now. So if I may ask, so what we're saying is that we possibly want to define each of the unclassified positions in the method or how they're appointed?
I don't know if it's, I don't know how much that would require, but I don't know,
Madam Chairman, why couldn't they go through the same requirement background check, just like everyone else? If they're going to be working for the people of the city of Bridgeport, I think they should subject to the same rules and regulations.
Yeah, through the chair, so on Saturday, we had a very long conversation on the unclassified service, what they are. I don't have the PowerPoint presentation that we gave, but it did break down what the unclassified service was. It did break down the tenets of the civil service system. It did break down what the unclassified service is. But ultimately, the unclassified service, they're confidential appointments where, as we explained on Saturday, if a mayor's coming in and they have their core cabinet, like a governor, like a president, they have appointment powers to their chief of staff and their CAOs. Currently, how the charter is written, you have chiefs of staff and the mayor's direct cabinets, arguably in a civil service system where if the mayor goes, those direct cabinet appointments can say, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be absorbed by the next administration and the next
That's not what I'm
administration.
asking though. I'm asking like,
I was fine.
similar to what you were saying, like what services, I mean, what, vetting, what processes are they going to know that they're a sound appointment? Is there a hearing? How do they prove that they're actually being good at their job?
Political process.
Doesn't matter.
Hmm?
Doesn't matter.
Well, we did adjust the charter to make the city attorney approved by the council, appointed by the mayor and approved by the council.
But the distinction there was, and I think the reason why that's a good idea is because you serve for a term of office, and there's nothing we can do to get rid of it, right? And so, unless you do something like that, which I wouldn't expect, by the way, for the record.
So wait, can I just, so then does that apply to this section then too? To unclassified?
Well, she's
Well, I am
unclassified,
unclassified.
Current.
but
I am
she's
unclassified.
she's unique because she serves a term of office, which almost all of these unclassifieds don't, so they can be removed at any time
Okay.
by the mayor.
They
So if the
serve at
mayor
discretion
appoints
of the mayor.
a public facilities director, and the public facilities director is a disaster, well, that's a reflection on the mayor, and he can remove them at any time at his discretion. That's what makes them unclassified. If the mayor hires a bunch of unclassified people who don't know what they're doing, it doesn't look good on him. So it's part of the political process. That's how. Which is distinct from classified civil servants who are there, and the mayor can't remove them. They are in their positions by virtue of the job that they do. And the mayor, it's not a political decision, it's based on their qualifications to be there. Or maybe they've tested for the position.
I think the question is, maybe is in the vetting process, and I know it's at the discretion of the mayor to hire who he wants, but I think the question is, if the mayor hires somebody that was unsavory.
And
So-
doesn't recognize it.
And it doesn't, to point out, they are actually serving the citizens of the city of Bridgeport. But there's no, I know there's no vetting process, just at the discretion of the mayor to hire who he pleases.
And if the governor appoints a bad education secretary,
Or the
housing
president.
secretary, Department of Motor Vehicles secretary,
That's right.
doesn't look good on Governor Ned Lamont, but that's the process.
But all employees undergo, like, drug testing, background check, all of that.
That
Even
includes
appointees.
appointees.
Even, I won't take
Oh,
it
so
to
they
me.
go under that too.
I don't know if I was unique.
No, everybody did.
Okay.
Councilwoman Guerrero?
I just want to say, let's remember that the President of the United States gets to nominate cabinet-level members, but who has to consent? The United States Senate. The Education Commissioner cannot be appointed because the governor wants. It has to be approved by the legislature. So his cabinet-level positions, yes, he has the right to nominate, and I asked for that when I first came to you, that he has a right to nominate, and the legislature should have the right to consent. Now, people directly in his office, his chief of staff, the CAO is a cabinet-level member. It's not the mayor's CAO, he's the city CAO. So yes, there are positions within the mayor's office. Yes, you don't want people from an opposing camp working in your direct office, but, you know, whether it's the police chief, the fire chief, whoever it is, it's a cabinet-level person, yes, nominate whoever you want, and we should have a right to consent, just like it's done for a governor, just like it's done for the president. Thank you.
Just for the record, the police chief and fire chief are not unclassified. They're in the competitive division of the classified service. The only difference is they're term limited to no more than 2 5-year terms. They're also unique, as I think Eric pointed out the other day, that they are not rule of 1, they're rule of 3, and through a competitive exam process, the mayor then selects from amongst the 3.
Faith, if I may just say, this was the first time I'd ever seen where we appointed a police chief, and I said, well, where's the contract that has to come before us? There's no contract. We're taking care of it. We didn't see a contract. We didn't approve
You
the
never
contract.
should have gotten a contract. I've been telling the city council for 15 years, 20 years.
Well, in the
You
past,
don't need a
we've done-
contract. You get an appointment letter just like everyone else. The salary is established by the ordinance, and they follow the supervisors like every other unaffiliated for benefits. They started the contracts, if you want to know the history, solely in order to give certain police and fire chiefs additional pension benefits, contributions to the IACP. That would be the only piece, and the only reason it goes to the city council. That's now been put into the appointment letters. So you don't need a contract. In fact, it's really unusual that you would, if not unique, that you would ever have a contract for a competitive division classified civil servant. It's ridiculous, frankly. But the council like to sit there and interview and weigh in and interview, as I said. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it's totally unnecessary from a legal standpoint.
And through the chair, if I may, as we discussed on Saturday, the number of positions listed in the unclassified service are very limited. And what we did in order to get this list was go through the charter itself and list the ones that said that they were appointed at the discretion of the mayor. So your charter, the living document that you're working with right now, is where we compiled this list. And where it says by state statute, the qualifications are established by state statute. The only really new expansion are a definition or defining certain cabinet level positions for the superintendent of public schools and labor relations, because the charter existed prior to the inception of labor relations and collective bargaining in the 1970s. This is carryover language from the 1940s and 30s. And we're just clarifying and piecing together the portions of throughout the charter, and that's how we compiled this list.
Thank you. Councilman Burns?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate all your time, effort. One piece I do want to share, and I think Councilman Pereira is heading in that direction, and some council reps have had conversations about certain positions that maybe should come before the council for essentially a stamp of approval, whether they're classified or unclassified. And simply from the idea that these are, public-facing officials, for example, health director. There is, let's be realistic, kind of a behind-the-scenes practicality that if the mayor is looking to appoint someone to a certain position, discussions are had, and maybe, that, she is gone, but, let's consider these two. But there has been some discussion about, again, certain public-facing officials such as facilities, such as health, police, fire, that may add, a little extra sense of stamp of approval. Again, when we last hired the current police chief, there was a public process before council. All three finalists came before us, answered questions. Ultimately, it was the mayor's decision, but he was able to watch the vetting process, and we could kind of informally give our advice. But if that topic hasn't come up, I'll put it on the table.
Just for clarification through the chair, just so you know, the health director is appointed pursuant to state statute, and that does require the legislative body to approve. The mayor nominates subject to certain statutory criteria, but the legislative body does vote to approve that, and you probably recall, those have been routinely coming, and probably more frequently than we might like, because there's been a lot of health directors appointed over the last decade.
Yeah.
But they do come to the council, they're required to.
Madam Chairman, I believe everyone that come into the city and the executive board should go to that vetting process, go through the city council for review and approval before seek office, because the city council is the executive branch of the body, so they may nominate, the board review, and you guys approve it. That wouldn't meet the criteria of the duty they're about to serve. I think that's the proper way of doing it. Not the mayor pick one, no.
I agree.
I would just suggest respectfully that if you're going to do that, you ought to have a communication or discussion with the mayor, because you're now seriously intruding into the executive's authority. I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it is a dramatic change between the executive branch authority and the legislative branch authority historically. Tom Bud may want to be heard on that, it's up to you.
We'll turn off the recording, because I actually don't mind the process, depending on the position, of course. I think for the ones that have a term of office, especially, since the health director is one, city attorney, police and fire, I think those ones are obvious. You know, beyond that, I'd have to give it some thought. There's a whole bunch that ought not be, the people that are working in his office directly from him, just as I actually agree with most of what Councilwoman Guerrero said. Those absolutely should never be subject to anyone's discretion except the
And the
mayor's.
mayor may agree with you, but I think it should
Well, listen,
be-
no mayor, I mean,
should be-
institutionally, the mayors shouldn't agree to, have his hands tied, because in his view, he's going to make a logical and sound choice. And again, if the person he appoints is bad, that's a reflection on him, so there's plenty of incentive to do the right thing.
But you can't just talk generally, you have to talk specific positions as you started to do, and as Councilman Burns started to do. You gotta look at which ones you're speaking of, and then give, I would think, the mayor an opportunity to respond to that, because that was not brought up when he was previously invited to the commission. You've heard a lot from the legislative branch, very little from the executive branch.
I just believe the people of the city of Bridgeport deserve better. And if we're gonna sit here to try to commission in order to put checks and balances in place, these are the checks and balances we put in place, as Councilman Burns said. Listen, the mayor nominated, we agree. You bring us your documents, you bring us your background here, and we interview, and we make a recommendation, and we decide who gets it done. This is how we respect people that we serve and that pay to build up that individual that can hold that position. Because they're making decisions in the department that they are on the basis of the people that they serve. But the mayor is as their boss. So be real here. If we're gonna do it, let's do it right.
Pleasure.
So, if I may, to the chair, so I just want to point out again that there are sections in our charter right now that specify the appointment of these executive level positions. And we listed them out here in chapter 17 because they were unclear as to what's unclassified and classified. You can make your changes and your proposals throughout the charter, but it doesn't change that this is an executive level classification, and they shouldn't have the same protections or method of filling as other civil service classifications. So if you go change the section in Director of Public Facilities, the Charter Commission says, this is what we want to do, and as you've stated, the mayor makes his recommendation, it goes to the legislative body for approval, that's fine, but it should remain in the unclassified service, because they shouldn't have all the other protections like a civil servant has as a non-appointee. That's it.
I would make a concession too. Thank you. Mark keeps looking at me like I'm
Was
crazy.
that a concession
I know,
or a confession?
yeah, right.
You got the jokes tonight.
Well, fatherly, let me confess. I mean, everyone expects, because I'm the CAL, that I'm always going to take the pro executive position, but as you know, pretty much the opposite has happened so far. But just because I think, we can set some of this out, some of the changes we've been discussing that are uncomfortable, whether it's the city and clerk town positions or the city council, we can push off so that people can prepare and get ready for it, so it's not highly disruptive. And this one can be disruptive for the people that are currently in some of these seats now, or when they took the position, didn't expect it. So,
What if we
this could be
talk
one of
about-
those 2031 provisions too,
Right.
where we just say, it may seem like it's a long time from now, but it's really not. But we can just set things in motion for the future that will really kind of, set the tone, and people have plenty of expectation before it happens that, this is how we want to reform government. So I think there's a middle ground to be had here.
Yeah,
That's my view,
I support that as far as thinking about the future and having that in place. And I do, and also you mentioned facilities, health, police, if there are other ones that you find that would require, or that it would be in the best interest of the people to have a more in-depth vetting process, which it would be, he appoints, and they approve. I think that would be, nominates and they approve, I think that would be great.
And by the way, if I can just say one other thing, which is the reason why that's so important too is because we're changing the way this works. We're setting terms of office essentially for all department heads, which is not the way it works right now. So it is potentially, it changes a lot. So it really should be set in the future no matter what we do, right? I mean, because like the grants director now as a department, let's suppose we wanted to make that an appointment. You know, that person doesn't have a term of 4 years, but if we want to, every election, mayoral election cycle, have whoever the mayor comes in, appoint his people, appoint and have the council ratify, we've got to set that expectation well in advance that that's the way the world's going to work.
So if I may, through the chair, again, just so that I'm clear as to marching orders, did you, with your comment, did you want us to review and recommend a process in the other sections of the charter?
Yes.
Okay. And also, again, as I said, irrespective of what we agree to or don't agree to in the other appointment processes and vetting processes, the point here is to define those positions that are unclassified that are not protected by civil service systems. So they don't go on a reemployment list, they don't have the ability to displace other tested classifications. For having these conversations and doing it right, as we're saying, in what logical sense does it make sense for a mayoral appointee to be able to displace another employee just because we didn't include that in our list of unclassified classifications? So you would have a chief of staff being able to displace a variety of employees that are in the classified service. Even if you left it alone right now and said, we're not going to touch that, we're leaving that alone, you really need to look at the mayoral appointees, because arguably they do have or may have the ability to displace tested civil servants right now.
So did we talk about creating language for that?
Sorry, through the chair.
Are you saying you want language in the charter to reflect that, or do you keep that in here?
No, it's in the proposal like right now. So again, the as presented to you on Saturday in that PowerPoint, right now you have the argument that mayoral appointees have civil service protections and rights. And some of those civil service protections and rights are, I had time and grade in a certain position that I maybe previously held, and I was just recently appointed to a mayoral appointment position, and now I can displace someone that has previously.
Give an example of a position.
So Tom Gaudette, chief of staff, right? He formerly held the position, so CAO, formerly held project manager. Prior to that, I think you were deputy chief of staff and then project manager. I mean, arguably the project manager might be in the classified service. Tom held the project manager position for 5-6 years, let's just say hypothetically. If the mayor is displaced, loses the election, Tom gets to bump that project manager who's in the classified service.
I thought we already agreed on that.
decided they
Right.
gave up their
Well, that's-
rights when they took their appointment.
Right.
No,
Well,
that's-
that's not clear right now, but with the proposal, it makes it clear. So we're,
What page is that?
Well, if that's in here and make it clear, that's fine.
Yeah, that's,
the way
we're
it should
fine
be.
with that.
so,
Why are you bringing this up?
Yeah,
I agree with that.
well, right, but we're like talking about, for like the past hour, that this list has poor language or it might be too encompassing, or how do you then appoint these?
I think the only thing they could look into is to have more of a vetting process where they would go before the council for
I thought the proposal was to say perhaps, maybe,
Yeah.
sometime in the future,
Yeah.
only department heads and like the CAO potentially would be nominated by the mayor, ratified by the council. It has nothing to do with them not being in the unclassified service. They're still at the pleasure of the mayor to remove
Right.
them on a dime. So it would operate just like Councilwoman said, at the federal level and the state level. The governor nominates commissioners, the legislature approves, the president nominates cabinet members, and the Senate approves. They're still going to be removed at any time.
And they would.
They're still in the unclassified service, but I think this section, if we're going to include that ratification process, we'll need to designate which positions those are, establish a process, and potentially have some vacancy language in there about whether or not the next appointment is only for the duration of the term or not, or does it start a new term? So we have to figure that out.
So do you want that in chapter 17, or do you want me to go through the charter again and go through each of the chapters that specifically reference that? I mean, again,
Because doing that suggests that we're gonna deal with one particular portion of the chapter, and that's really hard, because some of those things overflow into other parts. Now we're gonna review the entire charter. We don't have time for that. This
Well,
could get,
but his question is important because you could look in chapter 17, he makes a nice pretty list of who is subject to council ratification. And then you go into the chapter language where their appointment is listed, and it doesn't say anything about that. In fact, it says the manager's appoints, and so it's conflicting now. So or the other option is, as you know, I don't see how any of these department chapters are helpful in any way, shape, or form. I can't think of a single time I've ever cited anything. You just
oh, I said
eliminate
mine
the
regularly.
entire paragraphs.
I say mine regularly.
Oh, but yours is unique. No, I think yours is, no, not yours. Yours aside, police and fire aside, because your nominations are very unique, in terms of office, but.
Mr. Lee, Commissioner Lee?
I have a question. The unaffiliated, you introduced a whole different way of looking at the use of classified and unclassified and other, where people derive their rights, and their employment process. Is there, for the mayoral appointees who go into this unaffiliated class, aside from the titles here, for instance, the term project manager, is there any place where there's a responsibility on the part of the mayor to post who these people are, or what positions, rather than people, since there's a sensitivity in calling attention to names here in the city? Is there a titling process, a project on the airport, a project on XYZ, ABC, energy, for instance? Is there an up-to-date, public, known to the taxpayer, available on the city website for accessing who these people are?
in the unclassified or the or unaffiliated?
Unclassified.
So unclassified are only the list that's given to you now. In the proposal, outside of the proposal, you have to go to each of the sections of the charter. But the current charter, the specific offices or commissions, and we have a general term of executive office. And other than that, the charter says everything after the passage of this act in 1940 shall be placed in the classified service, which is the civil service system. So arguably, everything right now after 1940 that was created is in the civil service system.
So am I to understand then that that beyond the title of chief administrative officer or things like this, very specific, that the department that was started in one person's within for 8 years, accountability and integrity, is that any place That's in this, is that unaffiliated?
The Office of Integrity.
Accountability and
Well,
integrity.
really, the title is project manager, or excuse me, mayor's aide.
Mayor's aide is listed in the ordinance 2.36 as an unaffiliated classification, but arguably, how the charter is written right now, it's in the classified civil service system.
Because,
So, okay, this is a common misconception, and it's a common issue. People are called things all the time that aren't really the title that they are. So, for example, you mentioned one position, another one would be like the property manager for the city. Well, there's actually not a classification that ever went through civil service called property manager. There's someone who I think is called the mayor's aide, although I don't remember his exact title, maybe he's a project manager. And he holds like we know him as the property manager. Those are his daily duties, and he performs them well. So what people call themselves and how we refer to them, what they put in their signature line in their email may be different than the exact title which would appear in the budget and appear in the civil service. So really, at the end of the day, these people, if they're a mayor's aide, then they're somebody who's supposed to be working in his office doing whatever the mayor wants them to do. And if the answer is he wants them to do stuff on ethics, great. And if he wants them to do other stuff, great, because that's his discretion.
but the mayor, at his pleasure or discretion, whichever word we wish to use, the mayor appoints them, does not need city council. They are employees, so they therefore take on they have a civil service right or not?
As written right now, you can argue that they are in the classified service.
Don't we want to clarify that?
That's
what we're trying to do.
Okay, let me give you an example of my position again. This is really confusing stuff. So Tom Busey, years ago, created this thing called Chief Administrative Officer. And when he did it, he created it, and every mayor since has followed it as a political appointment at the pleasure of. No one would have ever thought that an appointment like that could just stick around as a classified civil servant. No matter who got elected mayor, the next mayor could decide to boot that person and choose somebody else. But the language of the charter, as it's written right now, says that any new positions that were not already explicitly in the charter somewhere saying they're in the unclassified service, any new positions are classified, period. So when Tom Busey created that, created chief of staff, created all kinds of all the positions that exist in modern government that have always been treated, practically speaking, they go out with the mayor. When Mayor Finch left, a whole bunch of people left. The funny thing is, all those people didn't need to go because the charter says, and no one would have realized, this is a recent phenomenon as a result of some recent court cases, but technically speaking, all those people could have sat in their offices and told Mayor Ganem to go pound sand.
Only if they had the judge who wrongly decided the Neil Lawson case, because the charter does not say all new hires. It says all here and now.
Created positions, true.
None of these positions were created through civil service. They didn't have a job description, a salary plan. The CAO position doesn't exist anywhere. In ordinance, it exists only in budget. It was never created through civil service. It doesn't have, it's not in the ordinances. It's nowhere. So this argument, the judge took the lazy route in that case. And for obvious reasons or smart reasons, we did not reveal that. But I wouldn't accept it. I agree with you.
Well, I hear you.
We're going to correct it because it's a huge risk out there. That was never the intent. The intent was, if you go to civil service and you do it the right way, and you have a job classification study and you create a position, then you're 100% right. But the downside to that judge's decision, it is ripe for corruption. Any mayor can appoint anybody he wants, and now they're in civil service, circumventing the competitive process. It's ridiculous.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, that's true. The current system doesn't make any sense. Let's just all agree on that. And so we're trying to get rid of that system. In other words, you have people, you can have someone like the chief of staff of the mayor claiming protections that otherwise belong to rank and file employees. That was never the intention.
So no future mayor can bring his own team and be stuck with people from a prior administration.
Right.
That was not the intent.
No.
And they're rightly trying to.
And what it does is, it actually, funny thing, is it prevents even the existing mayor from firing his own people, which is also absurd. So it's not good for the current occupant or the next occupant.
No
Makes
wonder
no
it's
sense.
kept quiet until it blows up.
John, nobody takes interest except you and us.
No idea, occasionally.
Okay, I have some other things, but I'm not gonna mention them. The only one other thing that I will mention is section, let me just see if it's still in there. Maybe something. Okay. I guess why, so on page 8 of the document, exhibit 1, where it starts talking about the classification, rating, assignment, hiring, transfer, discharge, and compensation of the teacher and board of ed. Can that be its own separate section?
Where are you? I'm sorry.
The bottom, it's not, I mean, not, maybe not that section, but like a separate thing. When I read it, I feel like it doesn't belong there.
I agree.
So maybe moving that.
Page,
Oh, the page is page 8, section 7, powers and duties of the Civil Service Commission. At the bottom, it makes reference to the Board of Ed, which isn't, it's not part of that, so why is it even there?
Agreed. Yeah.
And then, okay, I am gonna share this. Is it possible to do like section 3, sorry, I keep saying 3. Basically, could it be like equal opportunity first, then Civil Service Commission, then the powers and duties of the Civil Service Commission? Because it's like, it goes through,
I see what you're saying.
you know, like just have it all together.
Have that first and then start
You
going
see
through.
my theme.
Gotcha. I see your thing.
And then moving education out of there and just putting it somewhere else. I have other things, but I would like to open, we're at 7, almost 30, and I would like to see if anybody else has any other comments about the proposal, or I could go back to talking about more, but is there anyone else that would like to share any questions, comments, suggestions?
I have a question and amendments to all the stuff we talked about in the beginning, but I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to listen to you for a while, I can do mine at the end, but.
No, I'll take a break.
Want to break?
You can go.
I have a question on page 11, under section 210, reemployment list.
Now, is this the new book?
I'm sorry,
The
the
new
new one,
one?
oh, this is the new red line version.
Okay, thank you.
Page 11, section 210, reemployment list. So here it says, about halfway down that paragraph under layoff, it says, if it is determined that the employee has no seniority rights in either the current or previously held classification, they shall be placed on the reemployment list, blah, blah, blah. That if-then statement sounds like, and maybe this is right, they can only be placed on the reemployment list if they don't have seniority rights elsewhere. In other words, it sounds to me like they have to exercise their seniority rights if they have them in another position. So, for example, a person has seniority to bump somebody else, but instead of bumping, they just want to be placed on the reemployment list for the position that was eliminated. Under this language, it doesn't sound like that's possible, and I know this is a pretty narrow thing, but I'm just curious, was that your intention, and is that the current practice? That they have to exercise their bumping right, or else they will not be placed on the reemployment list for the position that was eliminated?
So we can add the upon request of the employee or give them the choice, but it's common even in collective bargaining agreements that the employee exercises their right to bump. The employee, upon request of the employee, But yeah, I think that it is the intent where if you don't have any seniority rights in your current or previously held, then you're added to the reemployment list for the position that you're being laid off from.
But
But what if you have it?
What if you have that right?
Yeah, what if you have seniority rights? I think that's your question, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
if you have seniority rights, can you opt to be placed on a reemployment list as opposed to taking your previously held position?
So the position of CAO gets eliminated, and I say, I don't want to be the deputy chief of staff, even though I have seniority rights there. I'm just going to hold out and see if the city ever establishes the CAO position again. And I have the reemployment right for 2 years, should they recreate the classification. Under this language, it doesn't sound like I have that option because I have to exercise the bump.
So we can add, at the request of the employee, if the employee wants to exercise language in there if you want.
I don't really, and I'm not even expressing an opinion, I just think you settled on a position here in the current language, and I don't really, maybe there's some logic to that, like, exercise your bumping right or get out. I don't know, maybe there's something logical to that.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, we can, I think that makes sense, and we can add the, upon request of the employee.
Or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe they like,
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't, from a
maybe somebody
layoff,
doesn't want to go back to the old job that they had, but they really like the one they had, and they would exercise the right to come back. I mean, I can argue it both ways.
yeah, so from the layoff standpoint, I think I agree with you. When it comes to the resignation or retirement, I wouldn't put that in there because I'm dealing with an issue right now of a fire member that retired, rescinded the resignation.
Oh, that's crazy.
And then within 2 days, and then requested to be placed on not the reemployment list for the position that he retired from, but another one because he didn't want to bump his friend out, and so I'm not. So I'm not touching.
I will express a view. I will express a view on this. Actually, I thought about it enough. I think the whole point of this provision, I think, is when the city decides it's going to eliminate a position for budgetary reasons, usually a reorganization. The idea is that you don't want them to eliminate it today and recreate it tomorrow and say, oh, now let's hire somebody new. That's like circumventing the process. And that's why the reemployment, you're giving that person that was laid off first dibs at their job back for a reasonable period of time, 2 years. The bumping is actually more disruptive. And so if they would prefer to just be on the reemployment risk and get that right, I actually think that's how it should be worded, however we effectuate that. That would be my view.
So again, like the choice to, you don't have to exercise those in your.
Yeah, because I mean, again, bumping is actually more disruptive. So if the person just wants first dibs at their job back, should the classification be created again? Cool. That's what the whole purpose of this rule is.
So you're telling us that if someone have a job and a position that stinks up and that job get eliminated, you're telling them they can go back and get back their job if they get.
No, you confuse two things. You're saying hypothetically a person's bad at their job. That person should be fired.
No, I'm saying that. What I'm saying. Let me read what I'm saying.
Okay.
You're saying that person's job gets, the man say, this position is no longer, whatever the case may be. The person is in that job, they're horrible at that job. Not for fault why they're losing job, for budgetary reasons, because for budgetary reasons. So you tell me that person can go back to that job, and another mayor come or somebody else put it back in place.
So respectfully, you're again confusing two issues. Because if they're bad at their job, that is a separate issue from whether or not the position was eliminated for budgetary reasons.
But I think.
So if they're bad at their job, let's say that somebody's in a grant writer position, and it turns out we have no more money, we're going to eliminate the grant writer, and that person happened to also be bad at their job. That's a separate issue. That person maybe should have been written up and fired when they were in that job. Or maybe when they get reemployed, should we recreate the position because now we have money, or we want to prioritize that in the budget? Do we recreate that and that person comes back? That person comes back and they're still bad at their job, they should be fired, but they have due process rights.
It's like a double-edged sword.
No, because I think what you're saying is if there's a pretextual elimination of a position for the purpose of getting rid of a bad employee, you can't do that.
No,
If
no,
somebody's
that's what I'm
horrible,
saying.
you would fire them, you wouldn't eliminate their position.
But I'm just saying for budgetary reasons, I'm going back to what Tom said. For a budgetary reason, the mayor said, we cut in the budget, so we're gonna eliminate John, this department, that job, budgetary reason, because whatever, right? So, whatever, whoever was in there wasn't carrying their weight. It's nothing to do with them carrying their weight. But if that job come back on the previous man, that person still can go back and go get that job as a preference.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want to happen, and this is, people have tried this, eliminating a position so that they can get rid of the person, because they didn't have a legitimate reason for getting rid of the person, they just didn't like them. So if you held a job that was a classified job, the only way I can get rid of you is if you're bad at what you do and I document it, and then you're brought into labor and you get due process rights, because you have rights to your job. Unless you're a screw up, in which case you can be removed. But only if you screw up and it's documented. What you can't do is we can't eliminate your job and say, oh, we're reorganizing, and then the next day say, oh, you know what, we changed our minds, we want that job back, and then you get screwed for no good reason. So that's why this is, that's the reason.
Just a question on that same paragraph, where it says, the order in which names shall be placed on the re-employment list for any cash shall be established by rule. What's the word rule? What does that mean?
By these rules of the Civil Service Commission, that the Civil Service Commission in the beginning, under its powers and duties, can establish to effectuate the administrative functions of the chapter.
Would that be like seniority?
Yeah.
Okay. And the second question, and I have a problem with words here, but when shall be returned to the position with the approval and at the discretion of the commission. Can you explain to me what discretion is?
So there would be, again, we have had where we have a Civil Service Commission that has authorities and responsibilities, and they are appointed or nominated by the mayor, but appointed by the city council. And so I want to lay that foundation in that there's some credibility to our commissioners that go through that process, one. And then two, that discretion is very important, because right now the charter pretty much says that a person can rescind their resignation. And I use that same example, back and forth, and one day I want to leave, and one day I want to come back, and one day I want to leave. And right now it says you just take them back or put them on the reemployment list. The commission should be able to say, you've come and gone 4 times already. You need to give us a legitimate explanation as to why you left and you came back 3 times in 3 months. So that's where the discretion.
That point, it serves its purpose, but I still don't like the word discretion. It opens itself up to a whole bunch of interpretations.
Subjectivity.
Exactly. You know, you could have a situation, and I understand that politics is not supposed to be part of all this, but you could end up in a situation where you're
What if, through the chair, they be returned to the position subject to the approval of the commission?
that's fine, I just don't like the word discretion. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Tom?
All right, I'd like to return to John Marshall's proposal to eliminate the city council. No, I'm kidding.
Second. All those in favor?
Don't get rid of your own first before you can get us.
It was unanimous.
Add CEO to that.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I'm going out with you. You're doing me a favor. I was just gonna, I can take, I was gonna make a motion to amend all the stuff that we were talking about before, unless you want me to hold it to the very end.
Let's hear it now.
Yeah.
All right, so the amendment, make a motion that we amend, I don't have specific language for the section 210 reemployment list, which would include Commissioner Hosier's recommendation, plus allowing placement on the reemployment list regardless of their choice to exercise a voting right.
You're specifically speaking of section 10?
Section 210, on page 11.
210, sorry.
So 210, section A, it's page 11, just to make, so when an employee employee in the classified service is performing their duties satisfactorily is shown as documented by records of the department or other agency in which they have been employed and is laid off due to lack of work or lack of funds, that employee, so I had added just a note, look at shall, upon request, retain seniority rights in their current and previous held classifications as defined by rule. So other than the upon request of exercising the seniority rights,
Well, I guess we can eliminate this clause then that says, if it is determined that the employee has no seniority rights in either their current or previously held classification, you don't need to condition that right to be on the employment list there. If you just kill that, that might solve our problem. Right?
What line are you?
I'm just reading it again.
So I'm saying, let's see. The employee shall retain seniority rights in their current and previously held classifications as defined by rule. And do you want to say, and may exercise a bumping right? Do you want to be...
So we already established that following request retain the seniority rights. And then you're saying if it is determined that the employee has no seniority rights in either the current or the previously held classification.
Just get rid of that
Get rid of that.
condition.
And then, so do you also want to put,
So it would just say, well, here's another scenario. Somebody exercises a bumping right to a lower classification, and then we reestablish the position that was eliminated, then what?
well, no, so right now you still maintain your right to that position. So thinking about it then,
So it should say, and so, you know, we eliminate that clause, this is as defined by rule, period. In all cases, maybe, they shall be placed on the reemployment list, blah, blah, blah.
okay, I would agree with that then.
You lost me, are you getting rid of their rights under the rule?
No, so
You
the
keep
effect of
that.
what we're doing is we're saying, if you have seniority in a previous classification, then you can bump. Aside from that issue, in all cases, you have a right to reemployment for 2 years. Whether you exercise a bumping right, don't have a bumping right, or exercise the bumping right and then the classification.
Right,
So when you bump to a previously held lower position,
Right.
you don't forfeit your
Reemployment rights at the higher
recall.
position.
Right, so if you're making the motion again, it's the, that employee shall, upon request, retain seniority rights in their current and previously held classifications as defined by rule. In all cases, they shall be placed on the reemployment list for the classification from which they were laid off. The employee shall remain on this reemployment list for a period of 2 years and shall be eligible to fill any vacancies in that class that arise during the 2-year period.
Beautiful.
May I second that? No joke.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Anybody opposed? The motion passes.
So then, on page 1 and 2, these are the only other amendments I caught, I think. I have a slew of them, which maybe I can just read all together. So, right at the top, membership terms, vacancies removal. There shall be a civil service commission which shall consist of 5 members, appointed by the mayor as herein provided. I would add, maybe you see why later, for a term of 5 years, period. I can give you this in writing.
Okay, yeah.
And then, except for the employee member under section 203B, not more than 3 members shall be, get rid of adherents, of the same political party. Now get rid of the words, and no member, blah, 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 and just say, nor shall hold a salaried public office in Bridgeport. So just that amendment there is saying, with the exception of the employee member, only 3 of them can be of one political party, and they can't be an employee. The way it's written now is it sounds like we take the political party affiliation of the employee into account in the commission, which you don't want to do.
Right.
So,
I would agree with that.
So, okay. Okay. Then continuing, in December of each year, the mayor shall, I would get rid of the point one and just say nominate one person as successor of the member whose term shall expire for a term of 5 years, subject to approval pursuant to, get rid of the terms of this charter. And then,
Wait, you said get rid of?
yes, just get rid of the words, the terms of. I'm just shortening up, but just trying to keep it clean. And then the next 3 paragraphs, starting with if, in, and the, kill all of those. That's all of that language we talked about what happens if there's a vacancy on this board. We're creating general provisions that should govern all boards in the same manner. And then flip the page. In bullet point 6, pursuant to what Commissioner Sweeney said, it should say the employee election committee is required to follow the rules of the Civil Service Commission, period.
Where are you, sir?
Bullet point 6. The employee election committee is required to follow the rules of the Civil Service Commission, period. And then I would substitute E, so kill all the language you have in E, because it's a little, my reading of it's a bit complicated, and I would replace it with a vacancy in the employee member position shall be filled for the unexpired term in the manner prescribed above.
You said get rid of the
Get rid of E.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's a little, yeah, I'm just doing it for word economy and clarity. It's basically saying, you fill this vacancy just the way that we said before you do an election.
Just jumping back to Ed, just want to point out, even though under 7193, you could have 4 out of the 5 members of the same political party, because you have the employee elected member, by only putting 3 in a political party, we no longer have to worry about that issue about what party the elected employee is. So that was a good move to keep it at 3 that you came up with.
Yeah, so we're not taking the political party of the other person. And then the last part of my amendment is get rid of subsection F, because we don't need that either. It's covered in the beginning of the charter.
Yeah.
Those are my own amendments. They're all very simple.
Any questions, comments, any response back to his amendments?
I think they're great. Seriously. It's
Any-
not in a facetious way.
No, and by the way,
I think you didn't move this. Were you making a?
I made a motion. That's a motion.
Oh, that is.
That's a motion. And I just want to say, thank you for your second. Were you kidding? No, you were serious. And I just want to say, he did a marvelous job throughout this whole thing. As you know, the last version of this had a million red lines, and I could read this 10 more times and probably come up with other amendments. He did a really good job. So, yeah, I don't mean to be a backseat driver to your edits, but, you know.
No, I mean, this is a group effort. Honestly, I honestly mean it.
Can you go over that motion? What does that look like?
You want me to say anything?
Oh, God.
Not all of it, just tell me the sections, that's all in here now.
We're amending section 203.
Okay. And you motioned it?
I can submit my
And you're-
amendments.
John
in writing.
seconded.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendments made in section 203? Any opposed? Okay, so that passes.
There were amendments to section 205. I don't know if you want a motion on those.
Do we want to go back to 205, everybody?
Well, the easy ones, start with the easy ones, like changing pleasure to discretion, right? That's an easy one.
Yep.
Thought we already.
Well, we didn't vote on it.
Yeah, we can vote it out.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to,
I make a motion that we change at the pleasure of to the discretion of.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed?
And
That
then
motion
new
passes.
section 2, and we just got rid of that one word, at the discretion.
Okay.
Discretion, yeah.
Yep.
So I make a motion that we strike the, in section 210B, where it says the approval of, and at the discretion, we strike the word discretion.
Okay, but there are two of them.
Yeah, there's, anywhere it says discretion, that's how it should read. Anywhere it says
Pleasure,
discretion.
that's when it's a pleasure, it's supposed to be discretion.
No, we don't want that
No,
at
this
all.
is different.
It's good.
Oh,
This is a
okay.
different section. Instead of discretion, we want approval here.
I'm sorry, can you read the sentence? Where is it?
It's, it starts at
What page?
Do you see where it says
page
he,
11.
she, the last he, she?
Yeah.
Go, it's the next line
Oh,
down.
discretion of the commission.
Yeah, and then it's, keep going, you'll see it again.
Yeah.
And you want to change it to?
We want
Approval.
to get just approval, what it says.
So-
Just get rid of the word discretion. please.
Through the chair, what I have is noted, they shall be returned to the position with the approval of the commission. If there is no opening for the position at issue, then the personnel director shall, on order of the commission. So we're striking
Just
and.
strike the word discretion.
Right.
I mean, wherever it applies, it's in a couple of places.
So you're suggesting
All right, order and approval,
that
correct.
there's a redundancy of having the word approval. and
Well, I think
discretion.
the word discretion is too wide, it would be too wide of a definition.
So approval is
Just
sufficient
approval is fine.
to do it.
Yeah,
So it's redundant.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, I'll agree with Commissioner Lee, if I may, that I would agree with eliminating this for word economy because I think it's redundant. I still think, whether we like the word discretion or not, approval of the commission does inherently allow for discretion. So I don't want any future judge watching this video as we're doing this, let the record reflect that we're not taking away discretion of the Civil Service Commission. They couldn't say, they have the discretion to say no. Correct, okay. But I also support you.
Can I ask you a question
Yes.
about the word approval? Do we need to talk about a majority approval or anything like that? What is the approval of the commission? What does that mean?
So, through the chair, it should be interpreted as majority for clarity. We can add the majority approval.
I mean, if it's assumed and if that's part of the process, then that's fine. I just wanted to be sure I
Yes.
understood what we're saying.
Okay. Oh, wait, so John, you motioned, who's seconded that? Second.
Second, regarding.
Kelly?
Of the word discretion.
And, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're at 7:52. Any comments, questions? Do you have any, sorry, I did not.
No, that's okay.
I apologize.
That's like, because you guys rubbed me to 210,
210?
it made me look at 211. So I wasn't really looking for it, but I don't know, it may be something that may not be.
It's a short paragraph.
Yeah,
A little bit.
where it talks about military service, it says, when an employee in a classified or unclassified service will perform their duties in a satisfactory manner. I'm just not sure about the word satisfactory. You may have military personnel who are on reserve status. They may get called to active duty or National Guard active duty. They may have had one write-up for being late. So now this person comes back from active duty. Now, this word is very vague, satisfactory. They perform their duties, and so now can they bring up the write-up, say this person is not allowed to return to their job? We know according to the state and federal statutes and laws, they're allowed to return to work. I know that as a veteran myself. But that word, satisfactory, is there a way, I don't, together?
What we do in the legal profession a lot of times is put the word reasonable in front of it. And a reasonably satisfactory, that implies that you can't do it in an arbitrary manner. So I don't know if that works.
I like that better.
Well,
I don't know.
but Commissioner, to your point though, This reminds me of what we just did in 210, where we said, going to Commissioner McKenzie's point about, well, what happens if you have a bad employee who happens to get laid off for budgetary reasons? Those things have nothing to do with each other. Here again, the issues have nothing to do with each other. If they're a bad employee, they should have been removed and had due process when they were removed. Now, the fact that a bad employee who was never disciplined, and was never fired, and never given due process for such firing goes out on military service, they have the right to come back. Now, if they happen to come back and they're a bad employee, then they should be written up, and they should be given due process, and they should be fired. So I actually would strike this language and just simplify it, because again, there's really no distinction. Am I wrong?
I was just trying to preserve the language we previously had, which is,
Well, we're blowing up the rest of the damn chapter, so might as well.
I defer to Eric as to how he feels on that.
Yeah, I mean,
Those are the words you want to hang on to of all the, yes.
so, Chair, so USERA would govern, USERA would say, I think, ultimately that whatever your policy says, that's what you would follow by, because you want to keep the employee whole. Honestly, I've never seen Section 211 exercised since I've been here, but to your point, I think, right, where there is some sort of some challenge of someone coming up for a write-up. The employee would be able to, under this section, appeal to the Civil Service Commission if they felt that they were being harshly, I guess, reviewed when they came back, and they would probably have a right under USERA itself. I don't have a feeling either way if you want to strike it.
I mean, I think if I may, Commissioner Day, to give you to make a suggestion to effectuate what you were saying, just kill the words, who has performed their duties in a satisfactory manner as shown in the records of the department or the agency in which they have been employed. And just let the section read, when an employee in a classified or unclassified service has entered in or reported to duty in the armed services, blah, 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 blah. Basically, they can come back pursuant to state federal law.
Thoughts?
That's good. That's so, that covers the, how you can't get rid of it.
Well, that raises only one other question. What if somebody either has pending charges against them or is under investigation at the time they enter military service? Do they come back clear of that, or does that come back as part of their record upon their return? So it cannot be pursued a year later or 2 years later?
Well, I would pose a question back to you in Section 210, when someone has pending charges against them and the position is eliminated for budgetary reasons. When the classification is recreated and they come off the reemployment list, are the charges still there?
I don't know. The reason I raise it is because the issue comes up frequently in the police department where somebody will exercise their right to retire while charges or an investigation is
They
pending.
do that all the time.
Right. So
They do that all
I would
the
hate to
time.
think somebody is not retiring, but is going into active service as a side note. Now, is that ever going to happen? I have no idea.
Well, I think we know the answer we would probably give you as a member of the city attorney's office and me as the CEO, which is, yeah, the charge is still there. But I don't think you need to write that in there.
But I think, if I may, and I have to be research on it, but I think there's a difference if someone is already reserved, according to USERA. If they're reserved and they're activated, then they have certain rights. But if you've never been in the Army, you just decide to join, you're governed under there's a different law for that. And I think, I could be wrong, I think, if you go away, I think for 5 years, it's not guaranteed that you get your job back if you just join the service. You've never been in, if you're not activated for the reserves. So we probably have to look at that.
I mean, I think the overall point, Mark, between Section 210 and Section 211 about military service is that an adjudication of a disciplinary matter is separate and apart and has a process. that is different than their reemployment with the city for whatever reason, whether it be a budgetary layoff or their military service.
Listen, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, I understand what you're saying, but nobody has ever bitched about the existing language until right now somebody says it's a little too broad. And I propose something to put a little limit on it by saying it has to be reasonable. And now you're saying let's throw the baby out with the bathwater, even though nobody's ever challenged it.
Well, I would just say, I get it.
I don't care what you do.
Well, but the same language isn't in section 210, so I don't know why it's so important for 211.
Because we never looked at it until we just raised it. It was never an issue until 10 seconds ago.
All right, Mark, let's take this outside. I think you brought up a valid point, I'm just trying to.
But I can say this to you, whoever has an honorable discharge from the United States military, raise your hand. So that's why it's important. That's why it's important.
So are we keeping it and just saying reasonable?
Reasonable,
Yes.
reasonable.
If that satisfies you, I
I
think,
can go either way, reasonable or straight. It doesn't matter.
make a decision.
Faith, make a decision.
I'm not making it. He's more knowledgeable about
You
it.
have
Let's say reasonable.
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 I think for now, reasonable looks great.
Second.
Wait, who's motion?
Who's on the motion?
The motion is.
Diane, you want the motion?
Right?
Yes.
Wait, this is section 11.
Second.
Yeah, it's this, well, just one comment on this. It's not the military service that has to be satisfactory. Are we all clear on that?
No.
It's
the job.
Yeah, the job
service.
service. Okay, yes.
And I'm gonna say the satisfactory is kind of
Furthermore, it's, I think, an abuse of discretion for the Civil Service Commission to reject a candidate coming back either off a reemployment list or from military service to adjudicate a problem they had in labor, because they violated some policy without getting due process rights. And that doesn't seem right to me.
That's right.
Why is that okay? Am I wrong about that? I mean, I suppose, I'm saying it's a violation of due process. Technically, the Civil Service Commission meeting may serve as that notice and process, but I mean, really?
It does. I mean, so
That is due process.
the language in civil service predates collective bargaining and federal regulations of due process. I mean, that's what this is. But again, what's not here is the right to appeal explicitly written in that section. If some department head says, yeah, you got to write up. But again, the powers and duties embedded in here, you have a right to appeal that decision to the commission and go for your hearing.
I'll pose it to you this way. You have someone who had some trouble before they left and then went to military service. When they come back, do you want the commission to have discretion or not?
We're going to have this exact issue at tomorrow's next meeting.
So it sounds like.
Also, this is a relevant issue right now.
Military.
And what do you want the answer to be?
It's not military, it's reemployment. Well, the department that's going to say, hey, I mean, they're pending investigation. And you're going to have there's going to be a hearing in front of the commission on that.
That's really interesting. Because now you've actually about this right.
Look, it started.
No, it is a relevant, it's an actual problem, it's going to happen.
Right.
And should the commission be forced to restore that individual knowing that there's an issue?
Right.
Although, they weren't on duty when the issue happened, but.
Because you wouldn't want the commission to say, we're going to table until the outcome of X. And the person, what, should you pay them while the outcome of X is happening?
Well, normally that would happen, right? You put them on leave administratively,
Well,
while there's an investigation.
Right, it begs another question, which is, let's suppose that the person, while not with the city of Bridgeport, engaged in criminal behavior, did something, should the Civil Service Commission be able to deny their reemployment of the city? But now it sounds like we should have language that covers all of this, that it's not this specific line in 211, but really addresses reemployment of the city and civil service. You should probably table this.
I was gonna suggest.
I don't think, and I don't think that the Civil Service Commission should make determinations of reemployment for action to happen outside of the city. From this reemployment is Dan, like, as we said, and as written here, it's, if the employee was performing their duties in a satisfactory or reasonably satisfactory manner, as documented by the records of the park, it wouldn't be, so I resigned, I go and act heinously, criminally, and then I try to seek reemployment. I don't think the commission has the right to hear that. Because all they're limited to is what you did when, true, but from this context, it's a review of the records. Now, I mean, if you want to give the commission that authority, I'm sure the commissioners won't say no to it, but do you really want them taking into consideration things that didn't happen in the workplace?
I don't know. It's going to be relevant to the reemployment.
I mean, don't you take into consideration someone's, it would be the same considerations you would make if they were being hired for the first time. So if they weren't previously an employee and we're hiring them and you're considering their record, then you would consider it if they came back. Why would the standards change?
I think it's a good point.
And because they're going into a classified civil service position. That's what kind of gives the commission this authority.
We probably need to take a look at what the federal law requires. Because if somebody goes to military service and then wants their old job back, I'm not sure we can treat them the same as a new applicant.
Right.
And I think we have a duty
No.
to allow them to return to their old position.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
I think that's the difference.
But if there's behavior that is concerning during the time that they were no longer
I agree with
employed,
you,
do we
it's
not
troublesome.
consider that behavior?
I agree with you, it's troublesome. However, I don't know that the federal law, we have to look at what the federal statute says. I think the federal statute is to encourage people to join the military and make themselves available for, call-up in emergencies or to go on whatever, duties they have to. And if we simply say, now we got another crack at it, I agree with you. Look, let's say they go up, they killed somebody. Well, there's the job.
Quite frankly, I think
Not the military.
we covered this chapter really well. We did a lot of work on this chapter, and it looks really good, and I feel like this is the only pending issue. It's not the end of the world to just table this one thing until we've asked a couple of people what their thoughts are. This is a minor problem in the greater scheme of things.
Question.
Having served the state, we have correction officers who are shipped out and they come back to do the job. Problem I have, why would you penalize, all right, I go to the military, something happens. Why would the city hold that against me when it didn't happen on no city time? Okay, that's just like people who have drug problems or drug records happened 30 years ago. We don't let them hold that against them. So I can't understand. Help me understand.
Because they're being restored to a classified position, and let's say they had committed murder or something similar, like just fraud of some sort. A serious enough offense where you wouldn't want to bring that person back into employment. Well, the question is, do you want labor relations to have to deal with that after the Civil Service Commission has restored them? Or is it better for the Civil Service Commission to take that into account at the time that they're being employed? And that's really the question.
Real quick, Madam Chair, just to put it more in context, it was basically the reason why I brought it up. I don't know, it just struck me that, say you got a person that's working for the city. They came too late to work one day. They got it right according to the progressive discipline policy. They're not at the end of it with HR, but they got it right. So they get called to active duty. They're National Guard or Army Reserve. They go to active duty for a year. They get the orders. They come back, return to civilian life. With the word satisfactory, my concern was, could HR and where they work at say, well, he didn't have satisfactory service. He was written up for being late and not being satisfied. So that word was kind of weird to me. And I felt like that would be an injustice to a person who got called to active duty to serve their country and then come back and then couldn't get their job because the word satisfactory gave the employer the parameters to act in a manner that was not in the That's why I believe.
And that would not be reasonable, you know why? Because being late for work once would not be the basis to terminate your employment under progressive discipline. So it would be totally unreasonable.
Right.
And now deny the person.
That's why I agree with you.
Right. So we put the word reasonably before it, but I also agree with Tom, we should look at the whole thing.
Right.
Well, especially, and we'll do it in the context of the case that's pending before you, because we probably need to meet on that anyway.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I would entertain a motion I'm sorry. You did raise your hand. Go ahead.
If you could please look at 205.1 on page 6, I would ask that the word unskilled be removed, that's degrading and insulting. Unskilled manual labor, there's plenty of manual labor.
205 what?
205.1, it says unskilled manual labor, and I think that's demeaning. There's plenty of manual labor that requires skill, and I think you should remove that, it's kind of insulting. And then I'm more concerned about apparently language that's already in the charter under section 206 at the bottom of page 6, when it talks about the mayor or a department head might determine that there should be positions that should be unclassified, and the labor director has to research it, and then you turn over to page 7, and it says that the city council, they're adding this, the city council has to approve adding an unaffiliated position by a 2/3 vote, if I'm understanding that correctly. But language that's already there, which is the last sentence, it says that the city council fails to act within 60 days of the matter being referred, the position is deemed created and established. Well, the city council doesn't have to act. If something's referred and it doesn't want to do it, why would a position go into effect as unclassified because the city council didn't take action within 60 days? They don't have to take action. And yes, I know labor agreements say if we don't approve within 30 days, it becomes, but there's nothing in the statutes to say this. And if we don't approve it, then it shouldn't be created. So I don't like that language, that if we don't do anything in 60 days, for whatever reason, it gets approved and it exists. I don't think that's okay.
Clarifying question for, based on what Councilman said, if I may, for the classified service, is there language similar to that already, or will we add it?
So the classified servicer has existing provisions of creation, and the existing language is if the council fails to act within 60 days.
Maybe
For the classified service.
Maybe you want to make it 90 days,
I mean, but you know, the council
and the
sometimes.
council has to refer things.
Failure to act is different from, not doing anything. I mean,
Well, and it's double-
disapproving from like disapproving.
And it's double the period under the statute for approving labor contracts. So that one is 14 days to refer, 30 days for council.
You
to act.
can do
This is
90 to
double.
100 days, whatever you want to do.
I just, sometimes, like, you'll get a referral, the committee meeting's already passed for the month, right?
Right.
And then it has to go to the next month's calendar, and, you don't get.
But because the language already exists in that fashion for the classified service, maybe if we make it 90 days.
Okay, maybe 90, but I don't think 60. Because it's all based on the referral and your 1 month.
We should change it to 90 in both sections.
In both sections, right.
Make a motion.
No problem.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Select date. Classified sections, we've covered blue section.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
But also, were we tabling section 11, and who were the two people that were?
I'll make a motion to table.
That's second.
Okay. And all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Great. Our next meeting is Our next meeting is June 10th at 6 p.m. here. Okay? Who were the people that adjourned? Yes, we did.
Yeah, we just got a motion to table. Motion to adjourn comes last.
I will welcome a motion to adjourn.
I did second it.
Could anybody make? Oh, you did. You said we did.
All right.
It is